Good, thanks. Good evening, everyone. The time is 5:27. We're starting early. We will now call the meeting to order. I want to begin by welcoming our new members. We have Dan Stashik, who is zooming in for us from a remote location. Dan, welcome. I'm glad you're on the committee.
Thank you, Karen. Glad to be here.
Terrific. And we have Councillor Tracy Young, who is joining us live and in person. Let's proceed with item 2, approval of the agenda, that the agenda for the Prescott Heritage Committee meeting of November 7th, 2024 be approved as presented. Do I have a mover? Ray Young, seconder Tracy Young. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, let's move on to item 4.1, a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting from long ago. I have a recommendation that reads that the Prescott Heritage Committee minutes dated May 13th, 2024 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover for that motion?
Not here. So
Okay.
looks like it's Scott.
Are you willing to move that, Scott?
Sure.
Thank you. And seconder, you'll second, Ray?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of the minutes? Good. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And chugging right along, we'll get to the meat of our agenda tonight, which is item 5.1. It's a staff report regarding the draft heritage designation bylaws. So I have a recommendation that reads that staff be directed to bring back the draft designation bylaws, incorporating any feedback from the Prescott Heritage Committee to a future meeting for final discussion and consideration. And that staff be directed to notify and invite the potential designation property owners to that future meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this motion for discussion purposes? Tracy to move. Seconder, Scott, thank you. So the work on, so this refers to, of the 10 properties that were reviewed, so to date, 5 of those properties, there was a decision to, or a recommendation to not proceed with designation. And those 5 went to council, and that decision was they made the final decision that would happen. And then we have 5 properties where we had expressed an interest in proceeding to designation. So over the course of the summer, time was spent going through the material and writing up the bylaws, which I will turn over to the main architect of that one, Lindsay, to give us more information about that process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So included in the report were draft bylaws for 5 properties that staff were directed to draft the designation bylaws for. Those properties being 305 Centre Street, 388 Centre Street, 408 East Street, 490 Centre Street, and 425 Centre Street. So the draft bylaws include the cover bylaw, which would go to council. That included a highlighted section that you'd see in your agenda, and that was just to draw attention to the statement that says if there were no appeals. So that obviously would be taken out if there were appeals, but I wanted to put it in there so the committee was aware of what the bylaw would look like. The Schedule A is the legal description of the property. The Schedule B would have as an image of what the notice of intent to designate will be should council agree to move forward with the designation. So right now that's just a placeholder. And Schedule C is what this committee had been working over the last few months on. Everyone has it in their package, but I wanted to pull it up on the screen so that maybe it's a little easier to see. And when the chair and I met, we reviewed the information that was provided in the write-up from the Grenville Kent Historical Society. And we had found a layout that we felt clearly showed what criteria was met, along with the supporting heritage attributes, and then also listed the summary of the heritage attributes that were intended to be protected. So each of these properties has the Schedule C that we felt clearly provided a description of the property and then outlined which of the 9 criteria the committee agreed the property met. And then again, the summary of the heritage attributes. So I'm not quite sure how the committee wanted to proceed, if you wanted to go through each property, if there was anything we could go that you wanted to pull out or add, or if you felt that after review, you were comfortable with how they looked. As outlined in the report, this isn't the final go at it. If there's any feedback that this committee wants to provide me via email, you can send it through and we can incorporate it. So when it comes back at the next meeting, the committee can review. And again, as the chair mentioned, we would invite those 5 property owners to come, and hopefully that'll provide an opportunity so we can remove any misconceptions and clearly outline what it is that is looking at being designated for those properties. So that's my overview of my report. If there's any questions or any suggestions on how you'd like to look through the 5 bylaws, please let me know.
So just to make sure, these have not gone to council yet.
Correct. Tracy?
Hi, just with the notice of intention to, the notice of intention to designate, is that done after the Heritage Committee has decided, or do they get invited to a Heritage Committee meeting?
So the property owners?
Yeah.
So the property owners will come to a Heritage Committee meeting.
Okay,
It will be potentially the next meeting after we have reviewed this. And then we will go through it with the property owners. Then it would go to council from there.
okay.
And it would be council that would make the decision about the notice, about the intent to designate. Correct?
Yeah, through you, Madam
Okay,
Chair. I
please.
just want to point out the report also did have the process and for designation, and that was taken from the Ontario Heritage Toolkit, and it does outline there is a fairly lengthy process. You know, there's a 30-day period for appeal once the notice of intent goes out, and then it has to be done within 90 days if there is no appeal. So there is plenty of time for that consultation with the homeowners. And again, if council were to choose, that would be a decision of council if the homeowners wanted to attend those meetings as well.
And sorry.
That's good, please.
Would the, so assuming, I'm just going through this, but what if the homeowner didn't attend the Heritage meeting, but then they saw this come up on the council agenda, would they have the opportunity to speak at council?
That would be council's decision.
Yeah. And through you, Madam Chair, again, if it was an item on the agenda and they wish to appear as a delegation, they could. And that's something that we can work through when it comes to council. I don't think it's my intention that it's only going to be one council meeting and quickly go through the process there either. I think council's probably going to want a bit of understanding as well, so.
Scott?
We had 10 properties that we looked at.
Correct.
And we, as a committee, decided that 5 did not meet the criteria, which is put down by the Ontario government, I guess, or.
Correct. The Heritage Trust, yes.
And 5 did meet that. So then we've decided to pursue those 5. And if somebody owned one of the other 5 and did actually, in fact, want theirs to be designated, could be an underlying thing that they were going to restore or to something that would have met or would have made the difference between, you know, I remember discussing them in a couple, there was not an argument, but a little bit of leeway that it could have gone sort of either way or something. Is there any recourse that they can, if they are adamant that they want it designated, which may never happen, but it could.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an avenue that, like, are we notifying them saying, hey, your building came in second type thing, or it's
It's an excellent question. It's an excellent point. Lindsay, you want to say?
Through you, Madam Chair, after council did approve that those 5 properties be removed from the interest list, I did contact those homeowners to let them know so they are aware that they're no longer on the interest list. if a homeowner down the road wished to have their property designated, the process would be that they would come to the Heritage Committee. The Heritage Committee then would kind of start this process over again, review the property, see if it meets those criteria, and then move it forward to council. So if a property owner wants it, but the committee doesn't feel like it meets those criteria, that is the role of the Heritage Committee to review the criteria and make sure that it is.
Okay, that satisfies me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, if we're going through these 5 properties, what process would you like? Do you want to take them one at a time? Have you had an opportunity to already look at them and have some general questions or observations? What's your preference?
Did we already do that?
We did already go through every property. We just simply haven't, as a group, talked about the Schedule C setup for the bylaw. You know, do you see any issues with that? Any difficulties? Are you comfortable with the way that it's laid out? Do you think it's nice and clear, or is there something that we could improve?
And through you, Madam Chair, if you recall the exercise we did with almost the rubric where we made comments, that's where the chair and I had gathered all the information to figure out what the attributes were and what criteria was met. So we did go through that, but I wasn't sure if there was anything when the committee reviewed it that they felt was missing.
Maybe.
You're good with it, right?
I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Dan, I want to make sure we don't leave you out there in Zoom land. Do you have
I
any
appreciate-
concerns or any questions about the way this is set up?
No, I'm catching up, and I tried to familiarize myself with the information. I think the Schedule Cs are fairly comprehensive, and they seem easy to understand for me anyway. So I really don't have any recommendation to change them, but
Okay.
I'm still early in the process, just as long as you're aware.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks. And Tracy, how are you?
Madam Chair, I think it was the 388 Center. Was that the one that said that this part was the east part of the building didn't qualify? There was one that,
So I think there is a note on there that there's the east side of the building, is significantly damaged.
Yeah.
I don't think there's the roofs and things like that, so there is a note on there saying that there's no expectation to repair that. And so how it is today, we're not gonna penalize them for the state it's in today, but the rest of it would be designated.
So if they wanted to remove that, like right now, it's just a facade of
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the north wall that's standing really. Right?
yeah, I think, you know, and it obviously up to the committee, but I think that would be my take is if they wanted to remove that part, that we would not stand in their way.
Yeah.
But the main part of the house is in good condition, that sort of thing, then absolutely that should be preserved and designated.
Any other questions, comments, observations?
Okay, so if I may.
Please.
So we'll look at page 51, 1551, so 490 Center Street, which is the church. So we had an interesting situation probably 6-7 years ago. And one of the neighboring churches that was a designated property said, we can't afford to replace the slate roof. It is cost pervasive to do so. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the committee at the time said, well, we understand that. And we are fine with you replacing it with a non-slate roof. And so I wanted to just kind of walk through that is, you know, is that when you read this designated bylaw, how would the committee feel if they came? Because I believe that one has a slate roof. And, I think there are issues with it. So at some point it may come up in the future, but just wanted to kind of walk through that as an example as to how the committee would feel, or how you would go about determining, that if the request came to replace it with a different material. So it's more like anything else. It's just, I want to make sure that whatever we have in the designating bylaw, that everyone's comfortable with what that means. And
But we have to be very careful that we don't set a precedent where, there could be a building in town where the owner just says that he can't afford to do that and so on. And, I can see that happening. I can also understand the value of a slate roof it's just not done anymore.
I remember us having this conversation earlier when we were talking about this particular property, and I think that we, at that time, made the decision when we were looking at the heritage attributes that we would not include the roof as a heritage attribute. That's why we referred to it as just style, massing, composition of the rubble and the limestone. So I think that we had said that by not putting it on there, it was not a piece then that would be protected.
Well, I can remember a bit of discussion about it, but I don't think I would leave it that it's not covered. I think there should be something saying that in lieu of the slate, that it would have to be something that somewhat matched, like I would hate to see a green steel roof go on. And if we don't have something in there saying to match and or comparative thing, then you're leaving yourself open that, hey, it says that I can put on any type of roof. And
so maybe it's worth a conversation of, is it the shape of the roof or the material that's being used? And I think that for the previous ones, that's what it kind of came down to. Are you losing anything specific to the building, while also weighing, if they can't repair the roof or can't afford to repair the roof, then you're going to just end up destroying the entire building. So it's a little bit of a give and take, but it's just one of those things that I think it's helpful when you're going through the bylaw to think about, what alterations could come up and what are you comfortable with or not comfortable with in your own minds. Because, this might not come up for 10, 20, 30 years. But it's a good example to be able to have the bylaw and say, what was the intention or what wasn't the intention? And sometimes it's hard to go back and guess, but I think it really comes down to what are you comfortable with at this point in time. And obviously, as you move forward, any heritage committee can decide that, no, they want to go in a slightly different direction or whatever it might be. So I just want to make sure that, whatever is in the bylaws, and not specific to this one, but whatever property it is, that you're really comfortable with what's in there. And then what does that mean?
Yeah.
Going forward.
Tracy, Madam Chair. So in this one particularly to the 490 Center and the supporting details about there's numerous stained glass windows. And that may be a financial burden on the church to have to replace with the stained glass. I know some churches are using something similar. I'm not sure what it is, but it looks like a stained glass, but it's not like the original stained glass. And if there's numerous, I don't know if that would present if that's something else we should look at.
well, and building materials and stuff are changing so quickly nowadays, and they're going to change faster than that in 5 years or in 10 years. We don't know what else is coming, and the stained glass is the same idea, if you're putting in new windows now, you're gonna go with vinyl and insulated and thermal panes and so on, like you have to. Right now, the, windows are single pane and they're, wood windows and, so on. And doesn't make any sense to, keep it up, but as long as you keep the integrity of the building such that it looks like original and actually original, same idea as the roofing, like they do make steel roofing that looks like the slate roofing and so on.
Sure, actually, the homeowners of the property beside it that used to be the hall, the church hall,
Mhm.
have done exactly that.
Yeah.
Steel roof with
That's right.
a
it's
shale
still
kind of look. Yeah.
looks right and so on. And when I mentioned steel roofing earlier, I was, most houses now and stuff are going with steel roofing. That's just the plain sheets that were on
Yeah.
barns and
Yeah.
stuff for years.
Yeah.
And the stained glass is the same ideas. Yes, they come up with new ideas and stuff that look and so on. And
Well, and the thing with the stained glass is that, it does meet the criteria of the design value and the high degree of craftsmanship or artistic merit. So it is the representative attribute of the criteria.
I think basically a church, as an old town hall or anything else, the owners want to keep the integrity of the building as close to original anyway. I'm not overly concerned with that. It's when something that was historically significant or something all of a sudden becomes a 6-unit dwelling house where you get the changes and stuff, that's what would bother me a lot more than a church in there.
I wonder if it would be helpful for us, and maybe not now, but at some point to develop kind of almost our beliefs as a committee around what happens if a roof goes, or if there's a problem with the stained glass windows. Like, what's our general sense of even in a kind of priority order, what would we hope to be able to see? I don't know. Would that help us?
You can go down Main Street, and the fires that haven't been low lately, but 50, 60, 70 years ago, there were numerous buildings that had fires in them. My building was one that the top floor burnt off the west end. Beach Hardware's building, where whatever it's called now.
Shoppers?
No,
Zen.
Zen's Inn.
Oh, okay.
The top floor burnt off a bit at one time, and they just, they put on a sloped roof and knock it down and stuff. And there's several buildings like that.
The old Sioux Road.
Yeah, Sioux Gold, they took off the top floor. It's not called Sioux Gold, hadn't been that in 25 years, but it's, however, it's, but do we have the rights or whatever to say, no, you've got to put that top floor back on and put it the same pitch and so on? Insurance, I guess they'll pay for some of it, or it never works out to, sorry. But
Many of those buildings would be designated, though, I think, without the floor, would they?
well, they wouldn't have been designated when they had the fires, but,
They haven't been designated since either.
well, my building is,
Is it?
parts of it are.
Madam Chair.
Please.
So what happens if, like, after we designate a property, say the property is transferred, the new homeowner can't has a financial burden and can't keep up with this. Is there a way to rescind the designation once they've been designated? And or like any kind of thing, like if something happened and they just can't afford to restore the way that we've asked them to restore, then what happens?
I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that yes, it can come back to the committee and to council for further consideration. Yeah.
Thank you.
And what happens when a designated property, an owner comes and says, hey, I started doing the renovations and I came across mold. And, you know, what's our,
Lindsay?
Pretty Madam Chair, I do believe one of the packages that came with the Ontario Heritage Toolkit did talk about damage and realistic repairs, and there were some examples of if there's a fire, you can't expect a property owner to rebuild the entire property the way it was with old materials. So I think taking a deeper look into, I can resend it out to the committee. I think taking a look at that might be helpful. I think the committee always has the ability to take a look at things and be aware of what the hardship is on the homeowner. I don't think it has to be something, again, where it's you need to rebuild it original at a massive expense, because at the end of the day, if they can't do it, they're just going to sell and they can't do it. So the property sits as is. So
I remember seeing that paper that you're talking about, and you know, when something is devastated to the point where it's a fire or whatever, you can understand it and so on. Build it back, it's still a modern building and so on. It's, you know, you've lost your heritage. But there's other things like, well, the town's museum that is being renovated now and so on, which is a fantastic thing to see it being fixed up and so on. And it was deemed to be, I believe mold was an issue in there, or water damage, whatever.
So, in particular, the east wall was crumbling, and it was just cost pervasive for the town to undertake that project.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really good progression that it went to somebody that had the expertise in that kind of thing. And part of that was the requirement to restore that east wall within so many months, which is what was the condition that was met. So, but yeah, there's quite a few issues with that building over the years, and its use and its changing use and things like that. And but it came to a point where we couldn't open it because there's certain structural issues and things like that. And so then you had to try and figure out what you're going to do with it. And that was the next alternative at the time.
Please. Madam Chair, is there, I know this may sound, I'm not sure how this could work, but is there something that could be part of a bylaw? If repair or something was cost prohibitive, I realize that would be hard to prove because you don't know what the individual has available to them.
Yeah.
But is there something?
So I think ultimately it's covered in the Heritage Act under alterations.
Okay.
So, so from my perspective, and there's certain aspects that you're preserving, and that's kind of incumbent upon the property owner to preserve those. And so if they're going to make any changes, then they have to come, and particularly to those heritage aspects, attributes, then they have to come before the committee and have that discussion. So I'm not sure that you can do something that's proactive, but it's all of the time and up to each individual committee and the application for alterations that they receive. So I think at the end of the day, there is a certain amount of guidelines and guardrails in place to be able to say that. And if they're making a suggestion to say, I want to remove X, Y, and Z, and those were the attributes, then that's when the Heritage Committee can say yes or no. And then if they say no, and council agrees with that, then there is an appeal process, I believe, which goes to the OLT and goes from there. And then the OLT would say, okay, so, you know, based on the heritage designation, you know, these are the things they wanted to preserve. You're suggesting X, then they're ultimately the arbiter of that decision. But I think getting back to Madam Chair's suggestion of kind of creating a guiding set of principles to say, you know, when you're considering alterations, these are some of the things that you're not. You don't want to limit yourself, but at the same time, here's some of the things that you could consider as you're going through and making a decision around these. I think that's just a good guidance document to have, so that when you do come up with these things, you're saying, okay, so I need to go basically this because it will limit you in making decisions. Because we also have a CIP program, improvement program that supports heritage. You know, those types of things. So I think it's on a case by case basis. And really that's what ultimately will come down to.
It feels to me like that it would be beneficial for us to have those guiding principles. And then I also think personally that it would be really useful for us to start thinking about ways that we can outreach to the community in terms of providing explanation around heritage properties and, you know,
Definitely.
kind of frequently asked questions. Here are some things you might want to think about. You know, here's what the process looks like. I was initially hopeful that we could finish all of these properties first, but we have been given a stay on that. We're allowed an additional couple of years to finish off. So I'm wondering if it might be useful for us to do both things.
I think it would, yes.
When and how does a prospective buyer become aware of the designation?
I believe it's with the real estate, the bylaw would be part of the title.
So it's registered right on title.
Registered title.
And then when their lawyers doing the title search, they would be presented at that point. Also, something for the committee to consider, some municipalities have gone and done plaques on properties. So it's not something that you have to do, but certainly it also helps.
Most people would be proud to put one.
Exactly.
And also then we also have the registry on our website, so.
Yeah. We have so many beautiful properties in this town to be proud of, and it would be wonderful to showcase that.
Mm-hmm.
Yours being one of them, Scott.
Yeah.
So have we got that pretty much captured? Are we, those ideas in the minutes, are we good with that? Okay.
I think I captured it, but again, if anyone has any comments they wish, they think of after the fact, they want to email them in, that's fine, and I can have a discussion and see if we need to incorporate anything.
Sure, sounds good. All right, so can we review this motion again, or the recommendation that staff be directed to bring back the draft designation bylaws, incorporating any feedback from this committee to a future meeting for final discussion and consideration, and that staff be directed to notify and invite the potential designation property owners to that meeting. All in favor? Good, thank you. Motion is carried. Does anyone have any new business they'd like to bring forward? All right, there are no questions from the media. Let's talk about potential meeting dates going forward. We do have a date currently set for Thursday, November 28th. So I'm going to ask for a motion around that one. But before we get there, let me check and see if if we could look at potentials for December or January. We've got a fair bit coming up on our agenda. Obviously, if we want to be able to start to have a conversation with the owners of the properties, then hopefully that would happen on the 28th. But we also have our set of new properties to review. So we need to decide whether we're going to hold that off to early December, sometime in December, or, when you would like to do this, because it might be a bit too much to do both at once. I'm not sure.
For you,
Please.
sure. Depending on how the committee feels that's going, if you feel you just want to look at the 5 properties in one meeting to give yourselves the time to actually go through everything, it's totally up to the committee, whatever
Sure.
you feel comfortable with.
So I guess my question is, are you interested in a December meeting date? And if so, what works? If not, can we set something for January? Feelings?
I vote for January.
Okay. January?
Works for me.
Okay. All right. Then can I propose that we make an attempt that we come back with this material done, the review done, and for the end of November meeting? Or are you wanting to leave that to January? Is that what you're suggesting, Scott?
I think January is great.
You like January a lot, do you? All right.
The end of November and December are just busy.
Okay, fair enough. So we are saying that at our next meeting at the end of November, that we would address, we might have a few items on the agenda, but the primary focus would be the draft bylaws.
Yeah.
The bylaws, okay?
Jump into this.
And then we would look at this
January.
for a January meeting.
Super.
Everyone good with that? Okay, so can we look at a January date? What works for people? I know Wednesday night does not work for you, correct, Scott?
That's right.
That's, okay, Scott's out for Wednesdays. Anybody else have particular nights that do or don't work?
Some Mondays.
Okay, yes, you're committed some Mondays. So are many other people in this room.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you got a date you want to propose for January?
So through you, Madam Chair, I don't know if Thursdays tend to work. There's the 9th of January, the 16th of January. Does that give everybody enough time after holidays if we said the 16th?
January 16th sounds good.
January 16th? Okay, thank you. We'll put that on our calendars. So,
November 28th.
and January 16th. Both of them Thursdays. So I have a recommendation that the Prescott Heritage Committee meeting be adjourned to Thursday, November 28th, 2024, and the time is 6:06. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this motion? Moved by Ray, seconded by Scott. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.